Our film begins with the stone hunter Joe, who is unconscious in his destroyed car in the middle of the forest, and it turns out that there is a girl named Cheng who watches Joe from a distance, and Joe begins to overcome and tries to get up and move well to get out of the forest in which he fell, but Cheng comes and hits him on the head and makes him lose consciousness. Who else? We go back in time to Laura, a few hours before the weather hits his car, and he will be standing with the merchant, Shayna, and his technician, whose name will be on the street. He notices that there is an Arab woman watching him from afar, and he knows at that time that they are thugs. And he immediately ends his conversation with Shayna and Kane, and gets into his car and flees from the gang in it, but he makes a sharpshooter and falls into the woods, and when he gets over Joe, he finds himself in a very strange and primitive secluded village. Sixes are dominant in it, and those who play the roles of guarding and hunting are the ones. They support their families, while the men are the ones who do the homework, raise the children and cook, and they do and have any awareness of the outside world or any technology, and Joe thinks they are entertaining him, and he refuses to believe the situation he is in. He knows that she is the leader of the tribe and curses her and all the women of her tribe. This makes her upset with him, and he was punished by imprisoning him in wooden crate. At that time, Joe decides that he must escape from their hands. He goes to town as soon as possible, but the astrologer of the tribe tells him that in order to get out of this cage, he must take weight from, and he asks the leader Cheng to leave him and go to his car. And if you are not sure about it, you can come with it, and you release him and go with him, and he sits in his car looking for anything useful, and he finds an iron bat. And he keeps playing with it until he hits his head and faints. He exploits and escapes. And he leaves it behind him, and because of his grief, the Arab car is burning because of a leak in its gasoline, and it is trapped inside a ring of fire. The people of the tribe start screaming and try to put out the fire, but they cannot, and at that time they hear, and he feels very angry, and decides to go back and poke himself in the bag, which he was able to quickly take from his car and play music on him, but it attracts Cheng's attention and she is afraid of the strange thing. Joe puts her on the bed and starts looking for any map that will bring him back to the city. And he meets while looking in the room a very rare precious stone. And he asks the second day about this stone, and she tells him that her mother, I gave it to her before she died. Joe offers her to take his mobile phone, his novel, and even his food, in exchange for this stone, but she refuses and tells him that this stone is the most precious thing she owns, and Joe decides to steal it. She offers him to meet her in the field and watch the stars together. And Joe accepts that he is meeting her, and they meet the two in the field. And they watch the stars. Joe is surprised while she is attacking him and trying to take off his clothes, and he tries to run away from her, and he knows at that time together that they watch the stars together in the tribe, and they are so close to each other, and you get mad at him, and you order to lock him in the cage again, and he tries to explain to her why he ran away, and he tells her that the people are in the city from which he came. They express their love when it snows, but also by punishing him and leaving him imprisoned in the cage, and we go back to town, and Ken and I will be Joe's friends. They look for it, but they fail, even after they try to use the drone, which is the plane in which a camera is installed, and it breaks down due to the magnetic field in place, and they can't reach any families in the end, and they both return home, and they found the businesswoman present. She tells them that there is a contract between her and Joe stating that he meets her every 15 days, and the violation of their contract accumulates, and he has a fine of 60 million, and she informs them that a number of them are leaving for a day, so she tells her that the weather is traveling for a trip in the mountains and will surely return, but why? You are not convinced, and you give them an opportunity for 80 and 40 hours to catch up on the atmosphere. And when we go back to the village, we find that Joe has taken him to the forest, and you make him stand in a certain place and you pull a rope and expect an atmosphere of chicken blood, on the basis that she shows him the way she loves him, and you ask. He marries her, but he refuses and walks away from her, just stepping on a trap and getting stuck in it, and he keeps begging Ching to download it, but she refuses unless he says okay to marry her, and he is forced to agree to her decision in order to jump himself, and as he walks in the woods, he finds a blade from the blades of the drone plane belonging to Beijing, and he knows at the time that his friends are looking for him. He decides to run away. As soon as possible, he asks about the village and its places and learns that there is a secret cave in the village. He thinks that this will be the only exit from this village, and Joe decides that his marriage party will not be tomorrow, and he asks her to give him the place he stores in the wine, because he heard about it and himself saw it, and they both go. Joe estimates that he puts sleeping pills in the barrel of wine that the whole tribe will have at their wedding tomorrow, and in the time when the weather thinks about how to deceive the tribe, she sacrifices and presents him with the stone as a gift, their passport, and at that time he feels guilt, and the next day comes, Joe dances, the tribe sings for them, and she gets down on her knee, as is one of the customs of the tribe, and asks Joe for marriage from her, and he accepts her request, and the whole tribe begins to drink the wine to bless them, except for the weather, who can throw his own wine, and the whole tribe begins to sleep, because of sleeping pills. Joe takes advantage of their situation and decides to flee with the stone. He can reach the cave through which he will reach the city, but it is no longer easy for him to cross it, but in the end, he can get out of it and see the city. Thus, he succeeded in escaping from the isolated village of Cheng. Meanwhile, Leanne arrives at Shayna and Ken's house, and you tell them that their chance is gone. And with the order of her men, they arrest Shayna and Kane, and you grow up, you print on me a contract of transfer of ownership of the house to her. At the same moment, the atmosphere reaches the house and distracts Leanne, and Ken seizes the moment, and he quickly eats the contract paper. And Joe appreciates that he understands with Leanne, and let her walk. He promises her that they will stay in touch, and Joe sits eating with his friends and they ask him about his whereabouts, but he lies to them because he does not want to harm the Tachung tribe from the outside world, and he brings out the stone to them and shows it to them, and they are amazed at the size of the ruby stone because they have not seen anything like it before. The test, and the three of them go to visit Joe's uncle in the nursing home. At the same time, all the villagers wake up and look for Joe, and they learn that he escaped with the stone. Cheng is sad and angry, and she decides that she will go to the city because of Gao, but the astrologer of the tribe refuses and tells her, but in the end, she guides Cheng on the way. And she advises her to take care of the city's residents and not be angry with anyone. As soon as you reach the city, you will find a person famous in astrology and known on social media, whose name is what, and he admires her calmness and her strange words, and he asks her about her manager, so she shows him a card that came and left him in the village with the address of the nursing home and the mobile number written on it. And what does he call the number on the card? And he responds to him, and what does he say to him? He wants a job, so I have Joe with his address, and he will go to the place of the house according to his desire, and as soon as they arrive, Joe can see him from afar and hide before you see him, and she begins to give in. She finds Joe, but Joe sneezes and she can see him, but he is disguised as a clown and keeps dancing. She walks with him and he tells her that clowns are not creatures. They are real people in disguise, and think a little, and you understand that the clown she saw is Joe. And what does he believe her? But as they return to the house, Joe keeps his friends walking, and she sits upset. So he offers her that he take her to Joe's house, but she refuses, and prefers to sit in front of the house. And she tells him that she will stay here until Joe returns to her. But he begs her not to hit her and lies to her and tells her that it is not possible to hit someone in the rain. She believes him and rides with him in the car and goes home with him and asks him to return her stone to her, but Joe is able to distract her with everything around her, play with pillows and spoil the whole house. And the next day comes, and you go to something, and you find the whole house wasted. When she meets Cheng, she asks her who she is and what is her relationship with Joe, and they both fight together. Until Joe wakes up. He finds Shayna tied up and untied quickly, and tells her everything that happened to him, and he tells her that Cheng is the queen of the tribe, which has 6 women who rule it. And you believe what you see when you see the weapon belonging to Cheng, and he comes the second day and goes to Go Mall. He takes Cheng with him to buy her some clothes and let her try everything at her convenience, and in another place, there is a person named Chan, who is a thief of jewelry and precious stones, such as Joe, and he is considered his competitor. He knows the story of his village and the stones there. He informs Leanne, who has money with Joe, of the whole story, and she decides that she will help him as well. And he decides that he will try to find out the location of the village so that he can go and steal what is in it. Chong is happy with Joe, but he feels guilty that he tried to steal, including her own stone, and he tells her that she must return to her village, because this place is not safe. And the next day comes, and Ching will have completely disappeared from the house, and the atmosphere remains our shame, and Kin does not know whether she has returned to her village or where she has gone, and they went around on it. And then Lien learns that Cheng is not at her house, and the atmosphere is afraid of her, so she decides to make a plan on her to make him tell her the location of the village. They call Joe and tell him to take Ching with them and take her hostage, and that they could leave it if they raided a map of the village's location. Unfortunately, the plan succeeds. Joe believes them, and he goes to someone with them and they arrest him. And the next day, Joe will know that they lied to him. Wan Cheng is not with them at all. It is impossible for him to tell them about the location of the village at all, nor does he endanger the life in her village. Meanwhile, Shayna and Ken notice that Joe has disappeared, and they spin it, and they track the location of his mobile until they know his location. And Yan calls us. They show them a video of Jay being beaten, and she threatens them that if they don't bring her a map of the village, she will kill Gao. And then Shayna thinks that she is telling Lian everything she knows, but Ken stops her and tells her that this is the opposite of what Joe would have done. And they both fight together because each one has a different opinion than the other. And then he decides to be brave. He puts Shauna on sleeping pills so she can't go with him to the place he's going. As for sleeping, he goes alone to relieve the atmosphere, and he actually succeeds in saving him. But during their escape, Ken gets seriously injured and goes to the hospital. During his transfer to the hospital, Shayna will be with them. And then Kane confesses his love for Shauna. He also tells her about the place where you will find a lot of evidence that she should hand it over to the police quickly. And Joe is afraid that Lian will reach Cheng village because she knew her whereabouts, and he decides to go and guess it, and he sees Lian and her men trying to walk to reach the village, and they discover that the weather is there, and they decide to watch him, and Chen will be able to reach the village before them all, but you succeed in capturing him and locking him in a cage. At that time, Chen apologizes to them for everything he intended to do. He tells them about Lian and what he intends to do in the village in return for their release, and then all the villagers go to the cave to be safe, and Chen and Xing go out looking for Joe, and they meet him at the entrance to the village. Lian and her men arrived at the village. They tell Qing that she must take the precious stones in the village, but she refuses to tell them anything. And one of Jan's men takes out a gun and threatens to kill them if they don't say anything about me. The place of the stones. At that time, someone from the village came out of the cave, and she sees what is happening in front of her, so she takes out the bow and shoots an arrow at the one who is holding the gun, and before he falls, he hits a bullet by mistake on a spasm, so Cheng protects her, sacrifices his life, and dies. At that time, she would be afraid of a spasm for the one with her, and you try to deceive and make her walk after her, and you wrap them in a circle around the place, but they feel that she is deceiving them when they threaten to kill her. The police will arrive at the scene with Shayna and arrest Lian and her men. And the village is safe again. Then we see Ching, Joe, Shayna, and Ken at Cheng's cemetery. They offer him roses, and it blooms after that Joe saw trade in jewelry and precious stones. And his friend kept working in the field he loves. It is game design. Shayna became a writer as she wished and they got engaged. And Joe is asking for Ching's hand for the prizes, which are in agreement. Then they all gather on the beach to dance and be happy with each other. And don't forget to subscribe to the Ladybug Synopsis channel.